In a new twist, Ivory Coast Incumbent government says it is no longer accepting the African Union mediator's intervention to help solve its political crisis. Now, the Kenyan Prime Minister says that the political deadlock may not end peacefully. VOA's West Africa correspondent Stearns has the story.
Kenyan Prime Minister Raila Odinga left Abidjan after what he says were extensive discussions with both incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo and the United Nations certified winner of the vote, former Prime Minister Alassane Ouattara. Mr. Odinga says the breakthrough needed to resolve the political crisis did not happen because Mr. Gbagbo refused to discuss stepping down and twice broke a promise to lift a military blockade of Mr. Ouattara's hotel.
One of the principal goals of my mission was to convince Mr. Gbagbo to accept that he needed to put his presidency on the agenda for discussions. In addition, it was imperative that the blockade of the Gulf Hotel be lifted. Mr. Gbagbo gave me an assurance that this blockade would be lifted yesterday by midday, but he broke that promise for the second time in 2 weeks.
Mr. Gbagbo's foreign minister, Alcide Djeje, says the Gbagbo government no longer accepts Mr. Odinga's African Union mediation because he's not neutral.
Mr.
Odinga failed in his mission, and we are no longer prepared to receive him here in Ivory Coast. We don't want Mr. Odinga, and we think that there is no willingness from Mr. Odinga's side to seek a durable solution in Ivory Coast.
Djeje says blockading Mr. Ouattara's hotel is a matter of security, not politics.
We could not lift the blockade without discussing the ways in which we could be sure that security could be assured everywhere.
The African Union, the United Nations, the European Union and the United States recognize Mr. Ouattara's victory and say Mr. Gbagbo must leave. Mr. Gbagbo says he was re-elected when allies on the Constitutional Council annulled enough Ouattara votes to put him ahead. Mr. Ouattara this week called for a general strike in protest, but few seem to take part.
We're just telling ourselves today that we need to go back to work. So this story about general strike or not, we're going on about our business. That's all we know.
The Economic Community of West African States says it's considering military action to remove Mr. Gbagbo if he does not hand over to Mr. Ouattara. Mr. Odinga says he believes there'll be additional economic and financial sanctions and possibly the use of force.
Time is running out for an amicably negotiated settlement. In addition, the window of opportunity for any amnesty will continue to close if Mr. Gbagbo's supporters continue to commit crimes against civilians and peacekeepers.
The United Nations says its peacekeepers are being attacked by pro-Gbagbo militants. The Security Council has unanimously approved another 2,000 peacekeepers for Ivory Coast, boosting that force to nearly 12,000 troops. The UN extended the temporary deployment of 3 infantry companies and transferred 3 more armed helicopters from Liberia. Mr. Odinga left Ivory Coast for talks with heads of state in Ghana, Angola and Burkina Faso. Djeje says Mr. Odinga is trying to undermine the Gbagbo government and is no longer welcome in Ivory Coast.
He is talking to Alassane Ouattara's side and is now doing a tour of certain countries which are favorable to President Gbagbo to ask them to withdraw their support for the president. That's the reality. So from this moment onwards, we think Mr. Odinga has become a participant in the Ivorian crisis and can no longer be special envoy of the African Union.
Ghana and Angola have shown support for Mr. Gbagbo and oppose the use of force. But Burkina Faso is sticking to the position of the West African Alliance that Mr. Gbagbo must step down because Mr. Ouattara is Ivory Coast's duly elected president. Scott Stearns, VOA News, Dakar.